Hello, 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 and welcome to this episode of Online Store Success with me, Jody Minto. I am stupidly excited today to have the incredible Denise Duffield-Thomas here joining us. Um, Denise, oh gosh, for a quick little backstory, Denise and I have actually used to dance together as teenagers, and I've been watching in awe Denise's business journey from I think even the vegan brides. I think I was on your mailing list for that through
Wow.
to your money boot camp, and I've done all of your courses and they're all incredible, and we'll talk more about those later. But I'm so excited to have you, Denise. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure, Jody. I'm so happy to talk to you. Yes, we grew up together. Dancing was obviously a huge part of my life. And so I love that we have that background, but also I love when people that I knew from from before online world are in business as well, because I
Mm.
just think it just adds that extra layer of like people who knew me before, but also you just go, oh wow, we are just all creating these beautiful businesses. It's wonderful.
It really is. I mean, I know if we were to like go back in time when we were dancing and we were in Disneyland, and I know back then I think I was around 16, you're probably the same, and I was thinking my future plans was yes, I want to have a business, but for me that business was going to be a dance school. Like, I mean,
Oh wow.
I know, fast forward to today, and my business couldn't be any more different for being a dance school. I mean, do you think back then, did you have an inclination of you would work for yourself in some capacity in a business?
Yes, absolutely. And I actually do remember saying that from a very young age when people would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be a businesswoman or a dancer. But then I'd say, but I don't think being a dancer is a very realistic career. And I don't think you make much money as a dancer. So I want to be a business lady. And I didn't know what that meant, but I remember being so drawn to any movie or a TV show where it showed a woman working and either like having her own business or even just working in an office felt incredibly glamorous to me. You and I grew up on the Central Coast, which anyone listening from overseas, if you've ever seen Home and Away, I
Mm,
feel like that's kind of
yeah.
where we grew up. And I know I didn't have very many examples of people who even worked in a office, really worked in a proper job. And so it just felt really glamorous, this idea of, working on a typewriter, working on a computer. And I knew I wanted that, but I had no idea what that would be at all.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you right. And even that corporate sort of image for us looked like having to commute 2 hours on the train to Sydney. So even that
Yeah.
felt like such a stretch around, what does that even look like? I mean, for those that may not have known your backstory, what are some of the businesses you've had prior to where you are now?
Well, my first business when I was 9. And so I at that stage I was living in the Delmar council estate, housing commission estate, and I made these bracelets out of fluorescent wetsuit material that my neighbor had remnants of. I think they made stuff.
Awesome.
And I rode around Delmar Estate. I lived in Neville Close, and I'd be like, hey, do you guys like my bracelet? I sell these bracelets. And it was very short lived. And the reason why it was is such a key part, I think, of my story is I talked about it in show and tell. And my teacher was like, oh, so how much are you selling them for? And like, how much did you pay for your materials? Like all that stuff that, as an e-commerce person, you do need to know those numbers, right? But as a 9-year old, I felt like totally on the spot. And I remember I was never really good at math. Um, and I felt really ashamed that I didn't know the answers to those questions. And I think it really set up a bit of a fear for me and getting caught out or getting into trouble or doing things wrong. But also, I think I was quite an entrepreneurial kid in lots of ways. With our dance school, often we would do chocolate fundraisers and things like that to go to Disneyland, where we performed. And I think I sold something like 300 chocolates
Wow.
because I took them to school every single day. I was the girl with the chocolates, and they were like $2. And every recess and lunch, I would go knock on all of the staff rooms and be like, does anyone want to buy their chocolates? Does anyone want to buy their chocolates? And I think that those memories for me are like, oh, I'm someone, if I've got an idea and I can be persistent and I can do it. But I would say most of my 20s, I just had no idea what I wanted to do. I went to uni at Macquarie. I didn't know anybody. I found it really challenging. I moved to London when I was 22, and I spent most of my 20s just kind of floundering between corporate life and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I think one of the reasons why I floundered and why I think it's much easier now is because I didn't know anybody who had a business. And so I either had my Central Coast friends, and a lot of my friends there, they're nurses, they're doctors, sorry, they're nurses or teachers. Mostly people went into those kind of professions. And then I had my uni friends, everyone went into consulting. And then I was like, but I just want to have a business. And I just sounded like such a delusional person because they were like, well, what are you going to make? And I was like, well, I don't know. And so that's when my early businesses were kind of like, well, I just, lost weight for my wedding using raw food. Okay, I'll teach that. Oh, I just, I was doing online dating. I'll teach that. And there wasn't any cohesiveness around it because I didn't know, and I didn't know anybody who could even do it. And so once, no, exactly. And so a friend told me about Ali Brown, who was very successful, one of the pioneers, I think, of online business for women. And I went to her conference, and she was like, I was a millionaire by 35. Here's the blueprint of how you put together a business. And I just went, I'm gonna do this. I became a life coach, then a business coach, and then I started talking more just about money. And that's kind of where I think I found my niche. But the technology kind of had to catch up, like it would have been really hard for me to start a business, I think, without the online world.
Yes, to be able to deliver it. Yeah, I hear.
Yeah.
It's so crazy to think back. It's really only a short space of time since when we started, where advertising looked like yellow pages, and now we've got all this whole online world. It's changed so rapidly, and so in such a great way. There's just so much opportunity now to launch a business really quickly, and test different things and find your spot. So I think it's been a wild ride. I don't know about you, but it's been a whole lot of fun as well.
Oh, it's so fun. But also, you think of, I don't know, 20 years ago, if you wanted to start a business, the startup costs alone would have been so hard. And I would even say 10, 15 years ago, even creating a website was incredibly expensive, and now you really can do a business with a phone, internet connection, and you can figure it out. Doesn't mean it's always going to be easy, but the barriers to entry are practically non-existent, right? Yes, there's more competition. Yes, you still need to find a niche, but in terms of starting something and trying it, like you got to just do it.
Just do it. That's it. This is my fourth business, I think. And I think most entrepreneurs do have a number of different businesses where they're testing things out. So it's great that we have that ability now to do that quickly and I guess fail fast and move on to the next thing. So yeah, it's so cool. I've done all of your courses, which are amazing. And in Money Bootcamp, I know particularly it's a common discussion around charging what we're worth as a female business owner, because for most of us there's this empathic part of us that wants to help, and obviously for many of our businesses we do actually do that, but we feel guilty about charging what we're worth or raising our prices. Why do you think we struggle with it so much, and perhaps in comparison to a man who's just like, these are the prices, deal with it? Like what sort of shift do we need to make?
Well, you know what? It's so layered, of course, but there have been studies around how we treat boys and girls from a very young age, and we encourage girls to share more than we encourage boys to share. And so most of us have grown up with that subliminal messaging that you should share and you should be kind. Of course, we share that with our boys too, but studies have shown that. And even with things like pocket money, studies have shown that often, boys get paid more sometimes with pocket money, but also even the way we let our kids spend pocket money is that we might say to the boy, like, you spend your money on that. But sometimes for the girls, it's like, well, I'll pay for that then, and not even letting them control their own money. And again, the banks have done studies on this. So there's so many layers around that. But also that is such a power for us, right? Because that's why as women gain more wealth, it changes the whole world because we invest in our communities. We often use it more for, to educate children and to improve the lives of not only our children, but other people's children. And studies have shown that again, that when women have more access to money, the GDP of the whole country will rise, as well as future prospects. So it's a really great thing that we do. I'm not saying that men don't do it, but you put that aside, men, disclaimer, we're not making you feel bad, but it is just true. That's just how we spend money. And there is a part of us then that undercharges, over delivers, gets mired in guilt. We hold ourselves back because we feel bad, and we can often be our own glass ceiling in business because we want people to like us. We want people to think that we're kind and generous. And I think that does hold us back. And so we don't want to do business in a gross, evil, greedy way. And so we do need to shift that conversation in ourselves. It's okay for us to have boundaries. It's okay for us to charge what we're worth. And even that conversation itself, what are you worth? You don't know. And so the price that you're putting on your goods and services, it's an energetic exchange, but it's not a reflection of ourselves as a human being. We have to take that emotion out of it and to charge win-win pricing. So we feel good, the customer feels good, but that doesn't mean, and I think this is just the hardest thing, there's no such thing as a critic-proof price point. Not everyone is going to feel happy. Not everyone's going to be able to afford what we have to offer. And I think we tie ourselves up in not thinking, how can I be kind, generous, affordable for everybody, no matter their circumstances. And it's just an impossible task.
It really is. And if anything, when I first started, particularly in my coaching business, I was absolutely undercharging, over delivering, and even over delivering it comes with all sorts of problems, right? Like it becomes then overwhelming for the client as well as us, and then it can build to resentment and all these kind of things. But on my own business journey and through the work I've been doing through you and your programs, I have got really great boundaries now. But I've had a number of instances recently where people have just reacted so grossly when I've implemented these boundaries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And it feels like some sort of big universal lesson, but when you're in it, it feels really painful. And I know for me, I was like, I'm a bad person, I'm being greedy, I should just help them. In this particular case, it was someone that had paid for a one-off, one-on-one call and then continued to email me for 6 months with their questions and whatnot. And I kept sort of tying it back in and saying, hey, let's chat about ongoing coaching. And then they had this kind of Facebook ad crisis where their account had been hacked, and they're like, please, can you help me? Do you have any contacts? And I was like, hey, we've been chatting about working together. This is exactly what I help with. And the reaction and response I got was crazy. It was like, thanks very much. Our values clearly don't align, and not asking to steal your IP. And it was just like, oh my gosh, I've been doing all the work, I've been setting the boundaries, and someone's reacted like this. And it feels a little bit for me like it was like, oh, maybe I'm being too hard and with my boundaries. But I think in that instance I wasn't. But it's certainly, I think, like it's an ongoing journey and an ongoing lesson around setting boundaries, and then not trying to take it personally even when someone has some sort of visceral reaction to us putting them in.
In those moments, I think you are doing work around that. So you're obviously going, I'm going to work with this, I'm going to think about it, that person's doing zero work. on her reaction. And then I'll ask myself, would I ever do that? Would I ever email somebody and be like, I would never. I would
No.
never. And so there's sometimes people you just go, I cannot reason with some people. And also I think doing the work doesn't mean that you won't get those people sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're just a beautiful example of, oh, okay, where do I need to tighten this up? At like application process, or getting a VA to answer those, or whatever it is. But it is going to happen. And I think some people are terrified about those things happening. And I always just say, God, it's a rite of passage for somebody to rip you off. It's a rite of passage for somebody to lose their shit at you. And then you can learn from it, but also you realize, like, okay, I didn't die. It's fine.
I survived.
I survived. And and also having people around you where you can talk to about it, because everyone in business has had those experiences, but it feels very lonely when you're the only person.
Absolutely. It does. And I know for me, like, it makes me question, okay, maybe I'm being too tough. But for me, I think my lesson was ever responding to the first couple of emails post that call. Like if I was to go back in time, I should have never actually given answers in the email. But I've had it even in my fashion business in Island Co, where crazy things where people have ordered something online that was clearly 2 sizes too small, forced themselves into it to the point of then having to be cut out of it and sending it back and saying, this is faulty, give me my money back. Like the craziest things. And like you said, I think it's such a rite of passage for all business owners, and anyone listening to this, I'm sure, has a whole list of stories similar to this, right? And I think it's just really important that we stay true to ourselves and remember our boundaries. And in that case with the lady cutting herself out of the garment, going back to the T's and C's and going, right, now we have to add in something about, please do not force it on if it's not yours. I'm not taking this back and giving you a refund if you stuff yourself into it.
Exactly. But I think that what you just said, though, is so key, is you learn from it and you update your T's and C's, because I've had so many things happen like that where I've gone, you know what, that's kind of on me as well. Or you kind of go, you know what, I'm going to suck this one up because it wasn't explicit, or I didn't think that was an issue. And one of those things for me was the people contacting me outside of sessions. And I remember she sent me an email, and I went, you know what, I'm not going to respond within 5 minutes like I have been of stuff that's outside of our session. And then she sent me a Facebook message, and then she sent me like something, and then she texted me, because I gave people my mobile number back in those days. And I remember going, I have to nip this in the bud right now. And I sent her a message to say, hey, just to let you know, coaching outside of our sessions isn't included in your contract. So, and then I implemented a form to be like, at the start of the week, put all your stuff down in here. And I remember slamming my computer shut, going to bed, feeling sick about it all night, feeling like I am the worst person in the world. I'm so ungenerous. And her response was just like, oh yeah, of course, thank you for reminding me. And I went, oh, okay, it's fine. Okay, cool. But then I was like, I'll put that in my T's and C's now.
Yeah, that's right. So often they are a lesson. It was like, okay, we need to tighten something up somewhere else. No, it's so true. What would you say to a lot of the business owners I work with are often have got these big goals around like hitting 6 figures or hitting 7 figures, and this assumption that once they hit that next level of business, once they hit that number, that all of their money worries will disappear. And I know both you and I fully understand and appreciate it's not at every new level is a whole nother layer of different problems. But what would you say is some of the biggest mindset shifts people need to make once they start earning more?
You know what? It's so funny, because I have been telling people for years, there is no space where you're perfect and all that kind of stuff. But then I realized that I felt like, no, but I have to be perfect. It's okay for me to tell other people this, but I actually have to be perfect. And it wasn't until I met a billionaire, and she was telling me about some of the problems that her clients face who have businesses that are in the hundreds of millions. And I was like, well, they're the same issues that I've dealt with and that my clients have dealt with, just at different phases. and they're often the exact same things. And it
Okay.
was like, it's boundaries,
Mm.
boundaries with clients, boundaries with suppliers, and boundaries with family members,
Mm.
right? And I was like, it's the same stuff. The numbers are just different. And so if you have a particular money block that you can identify, like, for example, that you find it really hard to talk about money because you've always been told that it's really impolite to talk about money, that will kind of follow you along. And so you'll get to a point where it's like, oh, I can talk about this, but no, now I really can't talk about it. Now it's really impolite. And I would say I've got a similar one around being liked and being down to earth. Every single stage of my business, it's been the same money block. And I remember very early on, I was like, oh, my friends, won't remember hiring a nanny when I was, first had a kid. And I was thinking about my friends on the Central Coast and thinking, they're going to think I'm the worst, like snobby, like asshole, right? But I wasn't, I was probably wasn't at that $1 million mark at that stage. But then I notice every time I get to a point where I can feel those blocks coming up again, it's the same thing. Oh, people are not going to like me. But that would be the same if I was in any profession, because that's my core kind of block, right? Is that people won't like me. And maybe that's that tall poppy syndrome thing that we have in Australia of being too big for your boots, right? And so there isn't a phase where you're going to be perfect, for one. And also, you don't have to wait until this mythical day to earn money. You will earn while you learn, and you will make mistakes, probably the same mistakes. If you struggle with boundaries, you might fix it in some areas, and then there'll be a new level. It's the same block, but it will just be in a slightly different way. And sometimes our blocks are sneaky and they find new ways of kind of coming in, but it's usually the same issue
So
again and again.
yeah, it's so interesting. I look, I know, yeah, for me that there's definitely lots of boundaries and in things that often that's my biggest thing. And also, like you said, people liking you or people judging you. I know when my fashion business took off initially, I was in such a state of shock and joy that I remember sharing my screenshot of my Shopify sales figures, for example, and just watching people like unfollow me. Like it was crazy. I
Wow.
know. And I think for me, that's like, oh, okay. People don't want to hear about, your success and maybe don't like broadcast it so much. And if anything, like I was like, okay, you've got to, even if you're doing well, you've got to pretend that you're not. And again, it could be this tall poppy syndrome that we sort of have in Australia, where, like you said, we kind of, I don't know, it's just ingrained in us, which is really sad. But it's an interesting thing, and I sometimes wonder if it potentially holds me back, if it holds other people back, where you're like, I don't want to get too big because I don't want people not to like me.
Absolutely. Um, like I really have felt it so strongly where I've gone, okay, now, no, now people really won't like me.
Mm.
And what you'll realize though is that you could be small or big. There'll always be someone who doesn't like you.
So
Like
true.
it's just life, right? It's inevitable. And yeah, but I then work on going, well, I like myself and that's okay. And
Yeah.
also it could be really inspiring. Yes, people unfollowed you when they saw that, but some people might have gone, oh my God, is that possible for me? And of
Mm.
course, they're who you want to serve, especially the work that you're doing now, where you're more of a business mentor, right?
Yeah.
Someone would have seen that and gone, could that be me?
Yeah. So true.
Yes. And that's important.
So true. So true. I know for me when I first started my business, and I think this is very much the case for most women that start their own business, that we do it because we want more freedom and more flexibility. And then what
Yes.
ends up happening is that we end up working way harder and for far less money for quite a long time. And it's then also this narrative around like you've got to work and hustle so hard to actually do that, and that sort of keeps fueling us. But you get to a point where you're like, hang on a minute, I was working far less hours and making far more money in my job. Like how do we rectify that? When's the point, even when thinking about when we start paying ourselves a salary or a wage, and I know you've talked about this quite a bit, like even just some sort of amount of money each week that you pay yourself. What advice would you give to someone that's potentially like in the throes of that first startup year or two where they're like, what is happening? What have I done?
Oh,
Where is the
God,
money? And
I hear you.
yeah. And often then there's like a husband or a partner on their case as well. Like, how long until this business starts making money? What advice would you give to someone
Yes.
in that situation?
Okay, so I think Danielle Laporte said this. Okay, so she said, in your first year or so of business, say yes to everything.
Okay.
And so I was kind of in that mode. And then she was like, you get to a point where you have to start saying maybe, and then you get to a point where you have to say no to
Right.
things, right? Yeah, it's really tricky to know when to switch over because I totally resonate with what you said is like you do have to do some hustling at the start, right? And you don't always see it pay off so quickly. And that's why so many people quit because they don't see the payoff super quickly. And it's inevitable that you're going to be throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. Like it just is what it is. But of course, if you can focus a little bit and just to go, okay, well, I don't have to do everything. I don't have to implement all of the ideas that I want to do. How about I just start with that? And then you get to a point where it's like, okay, maybe like, what can I choose? Maybe I can add some stuff in. Actually, that doesn't work. Let's get rid of that. And then you get to a point, I think, where you can say no to things. But so many of us don't. We just go, yes, 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 yes. We're throwing things at the wall. We're chopping and changing. And what has really helped me in business is to have someone ahead of me as proof. And so because I'm in that information world, I always looked up at someone like Marie Forleo with B School, because every time I thought everyone has seen my program, I've run out of customers, I would look to her and go, oh, she's had 5,000 people. Oh, now she's had 10,000. Oh, now she's had 15,000 people. And I remember it getting to like 70,000 people. And so every time I felt like, no, everyone's seen it now, I was like, well, when you've surpassed the amount of people that she's had, then you know that there's probably no more people left.
Yeah.
And that really fueled me because I think it's easy to get distracted by shiny objects. And so I bought Mark this little light box that you could put letters in, and it just said sell more boot camps. And so every time he'd be like, maybe we should do a mastermind, or let's do this, or what are you going to do next? I'd go, dude, sell more boot camps because it helps people. It works. The infrastructure is there. And let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater,
Yeah.
So it's tricky, but I know what that feeling is like at the start where nobody understands, nobody can see the vision. And I think this is why it's so key to have community around you as well, because I would have given up so many times if not for being in groups where I can see, oh my God, that person did a launch and they made, oh my God, $30,000. What? Oh my God, that person did this. And otherwise, because Mark was in a corporate job, he wasn't seeing any of that. Of course, he didn't believe it. And I don't think he did even feel the truth of it until my business was at like 750,000 revenue for the year. He still didn't really get it.
Yeah.
And I remember we'd had one kid by that stage, and I was like, I don't think I can have another baby with you in a full-time job. And he was like, okay, well, when you make $1 million, I'll quit my job. And I remember just going, well, okay, I'll do it. And then I did it, and I was like, you got to quit your job. And which is a whole other thing. I don't recommend that necessarily for people. No, I don't. And I don't recommend working with your spouse. I really don't. But you have to be in your own corner, and you have to believe it, because not everyone is going to. And that means too, then holding some of those dreams a little bit close to your heart, because it sucks when someone poops on your dream. But they're going to do that because they haven't seen it. They don't know. They haven't seen the stories. And so their fishbowl is different to your fishbowl. They're swimming in a completely different ocean. And that's okay. You're responsible for that. So I always knew this is up to me to do this. If I want that big dream, I have to hustle and do it.
Yeah. I love that.
Mm.
I've always been in some sort of coaching container at all stages of my business because you're right. The people around us, and for me, my family members, even my husband, a lot of my friends, they're in traditional sort of jobs. So they don't really get it. They don't
Mm-mm.
know the possibility. And if I have some new idea and am excited and take it to someone, and often, yeah, it gets poo pooed on, right? They're like, well, you can't make $1 million doing that. What are you talking about? And being in that sort of coaching container or being in some sort of community where there are other people doing it and inspiring you has always been, so important to me. And I think also, you know, being in that situation where yes, we as an entrepreneur, we have to learn to flex that muscle around being our own biggest cheerleader, but sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
wobble. So having other people to prop you up on bad days or bad weeks and go, no, no, keep going. Don't blow up your business just yet. Don't go back to that job is really important because it's hard and it can be really isolating and lonely, being in this online space on your own. And I think being whatever that community or a coach or mentor or whatever that looks like, it is really important to try and, find support and encouragement and inspiration outside of our little offices at home.
Yes, absolutely. Also to normalize it,
Mm.
the good and the bad, right? To normalize it, to say, hey guys, I've got this hater, or I've got this crazy client. I think in those early days when I'd say to Mark, oh, I've got this bad experience, his response was kind of like, well, don't do it.
Yeah.
Like, so get out, like, go have a job if it stresses you out. And I was like, that's not what I needed to hear, but it sounded horrible to him, whereas then in my business group, someone would be like, oh, don't worry, I've had that happen before. Here's how you handle it. Or, here's my resource for it. Here's my checklist that I created for that. And I mean, I'm in groups now that are more like peer-led groups, and someone will be like, oh, do you want my SOP for dealing with that situation? Here you go.
Yes, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
But
that's
it
so
it
cool.
normalizes the ups and downs, and
Yeah.
then you don't feel alone. You just go, oh, that is just part of it. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. I know you're big on upgrading your environment and your energy to match that next level, to step up to that next version of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
What's one small, practical little shift that you feel could make a big difference for someone that's just feeling really flat and unmotivated?
Well, I think this is one of those things, right? Of how do you feel abundant where you are now when you haven't hit the goals that you want to go to? And it's a tricky space because from a manifesting point of view, it's like you want to fake it till you make it. You want to try and feel as abundant as possible. So when people come into Money Bootcamp, one of the first things I get them to do is an upgrade assessment, and to look at everything in your life. What is economy class, premium economy, business class, first class, and to really look for those symbolic things that either really make you feel poor and inconvenienced, and to add more things in your life that make you feel wealthy where you are right now. And it's different for everybody. For some people, it's something very symbolic. It might be, when I get my nails done, I
Mm.
feel like $1 million. For some people, it might be, using a really nice mug every day or burning a candle. It doesn't have to be about spending money that you don't have, which I think some people um, in personal development are encouraged to do
Yeah.
in the fake it till you make it thing. It's not about that at all. It's about increasing um, the pleasure in your life in as many subtle ways as possible to crowd out the feelings of scarcity, and also to increase your standards, and to it can be very symbolic in what you believe you're allowed to have and receive. And I'll have people who say that they want to make $1 million, but they can't even receive and allow themselves to use a nice cup every day that they already own.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's like, what are those messages to the universe? And even things like receiving compliments. If you're always pushing away even a free amount of abundance of someone giving you a compliment, how are you going to hold more pleasure and abundance in your life? So it's a way of practicing for the life that we are preparing for, but also giving ourselves permission to feel good now. Otherwise, you never feel good, right? You're always going to be chasing that next thing of going, one day I'll be allowed to feel good in it. And it is a practice for sure. So it's finding those symbolic things for every person, and sometimes it's not even a big thing. Like I've had people who just say, oh my God, I upgraded my pillow and now I feel like like $1,000,000. And I've actually, it's a good experiment too. When I started making more money, I was like, well, clearly I need to wear high heels now. I like upgraded because I thought, well, that's what a wealthy woman would do. And it's a way of practicing what true abundance really feels like for you. And I'm more than happy to wear Skechers every day. But then I might have a beautiful caftan, And so to find what true wealth means to you is a practice.
It's so true. And it just reminded me actually, right now I have a pretty crap car. And
Same, because we're mums.
And I've got my daughter's now on her L's, so she's learning to drive, and we're about to embark on these huge renovations where we're building a new garage. So I actually don't even have a garage to park my car in. But every time I get into my car, I sort of go, if only my business was doing better or whatever it might be, right? I could upgrade my car. But then just a small, simple act of actually going and getting my car washed and cleaned inside and out and then getting back into it. And I go, oh, it's not so bad. It's actually not so bad. And it seems to kind of recalibrate me into going, there's a bigger plan here, Jody. Remember, there's the renovations and then you'll have a garage and then you can get a new car, blah, 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 blah. So sometimes, it can be just something so small that can shift our mindset. That's really cool.
Absolutely. And we've got to do with what we have right now, and I would never encourage someone to go, no, Jody, you should, go and buy a car and put it on credit and fake it till you make it, because that car is the key to your success. Because now I realize, like I have made so much money in my business. I could afford a really, really, really nice car. And I have a 7-year-old Kia Carnival, and I will upgrade it this year because it's getting out of the 7-year warranty or whatever. It's covered in like dings because myself and my nanny we've crashed the car at some points in parking stations. But like, I'm like, this phase of my life, it doesn't mean anything about myself to not have a fancier car because I have 3 kids and 2 dogs, and it's not important to me at the time, at the moment. And I think we can really get into a place of getting ourselves into trouble financially because we're trying to either keep up with other people or impress other people, not being true to ourselves or what's important to us at the time. And growing up, I heard we can't afford it all the time. I can't say that to my kids. So, but I say to them, I'll say, well, they're not our values at the time. Or actually, we want to spend our money on this, not that right now. And I think it's good for us to get to a place where the money is not actually the thing.
Yeah.
It's where do I want to spend my attention and time? What's important to me at the moment? And actually, the renovations are more important to me. And, doing that as well would put more pressure on my business and put more stress on me. And I've spent the last probably 2 years right-sizing some parts of my life. Like I'm selling my farm because I went, why do I need an extra property to deal with and to have stress about when I could just go on holidays and not have to worry about the fence.
Mowing the lawns.
Mowing the lawns, right? And so I think we get to a point where it's like, what is true wealth for me right now in this phase of my life? And not to put pressure on myself, because that's not abundant.
So true. So true. And there's these different phases and chapters of our life where I know we were chatting offline before we hit record that the motivation can dip, right, for our business, and that energy to keep pushing and working in our business can sort of dip a little, and it's nice to have, the ability of taking a little step back and going, it's okay, this is just a little season, a little phase. The Range Rover can happen down the track, once X, Y, and Z or whatever it might be, right? So it's nice, not having that car lease or that loan or whatever, and that extra pressure of going, okay, now I've got all these things because I thought that was the symbol of success, but now I have to really work myself ragged to pay for it.
Absolutely. It's funny you say Range Rover because recently I was invited on a free Range Rover trip to go to Orpheus Island, this amazing private island, the Great Barrier Reef, to see the unveiling of the new Range Rover.
Oh.
And it was amazing. So it was like a helicopter ride to Orpheus Island and then a private boat to the Range Rover Island to have this car on the sand covered by a tarp, and then interpretive dancers come out and dance in front of it, and then for them to pull off the thing, and then Ian Thorpe comes out to do the car, right? And so there's like 20 people on this free trip with all these perks and stuff. And the whole time I was thinking, I should be on the Kia Carnival influencer trip to like McDonald's and Movie World. Why am I on this trip? Because the car costs minimum $500,000 base.
Stop.
Yes. And it was beautiful, but I was like, this stress for me of sitting in that car, especially since I'm always going to ballet every day and I never remember to eat beforehand. So I'm always eating like an unpeeled carrot, raw carrot on the way to ballet. And I was just like, that would actually cause me so much stress having a nice car like that. And my kids, I'm like, where I'm sitting there eating my carrot. And I was like, it's not me. And that's okay.
Yeah. It's so funny. I've been doing a little bit of weighing up, right, recently, where it's like, what would I rather? A new car or take the family to Disneyland? And I'm like, Disneyland. What would I rather? A trip to Disneyland or $10,000 in the bank? Probably $10,000 in the bank. And it's this weighing up of like, what makes me feel more abundant? What makes me feel more comfortable? What does that look like? And sort of working my way backwards and talking myself off the Range Rover ledge, so to speak.
Well, the cool thing is too, you can go on like a Range Rover experience, and you can go and stay and do all the cool thing and see if you like it. And there's nothing wrong with that as a goal too, because I think with any goal, it's always good to break it down and go, okay, well, how many units do I need to sell to make that not only a reward, but also something that then doesn't create more problems for me financially. It doesn't then make my monthly expenditure that I have to fulfill each month crazy. And it's really funny too, because I feel like I am in a place of my life of I do have the abundance, but I don't have the will to do it with kids. Because we did this big trip to Europe for 4 months with my family. I took my mom, I took my nanny for some of it. And it was so hard because I was like, doesn't matter how much money you have, you still have to deal with your kids. And there's this amazing picture of us. Yes, exactly. There's this amazing picture of us at Disneyland. And my son is like crouched behind a bush in the background because he refused to be in the picture. And I was like, you can't spend your way out of that. And so every time we've gone on holidays, Mark and I have gone, why do we bother? So then now we're like, we'll go to Nelson Bay and we'll rent something out for 3 days. That's fine.
That's enough.
That's good for this phase of life. That's all they deserve. and it's all that we can handle right now. But also I love the idea of making that of like a reward or something that then, I've had the phases of my life where I've really stretched to do things and it's been really fun. But also I feel like in this, you mentioned perimenopause, I feel like this phase of life that I'm in, I actually cannot have a lot of risk for my nervous system. It doesn't work for my nervous system anymore to go, wow, I have to do this launch to pay for this big thing. It was so super exciting in my 30s to do that. It's not as exciting for me anymore.
I hear
Doesn't feel
I
good.
hear you. I'm definitely in the throes of perimenopause and went to my doctor going, what's wrong with me? I'm so driven and so ambitious, and all of a sudden all I want to do is watch Megan on Netflix and sit on the couch all day. I don't want to do anything.
So literally before, I ran to the toilet before we hit record, Mark said, Oh, the cookware has arrived.
Awesome.
I don't even know how you pronounce it, Le Cruzier or whatever,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because of watching the show from Megan. And I said, babe, I have to go on a call. Don't unbox it without me, because I've been same. I'm like, all I want to do is go to ballet. I want to do my crafts. I want to watch my shows. And there is a little bit of an ego death there in going, I've been so driven my whole life. But I think there is phases of life, especially when you've got young kids, but phases of life where you do have to honor the stage that you're in, and you can't do all the things. And so for me, that's been disappointing people and saying, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be touring, I'm not going to be speaking, I'm not going to go to London or the US for the next couple of years for sure and speak at your conference. I can't do it. No, I'm not going to run a retreat for a while. I can't do it. I don't want to do it. And that's okay. But that being said, that then you have to then go, okay, well, I do have to keep an eye on my expenses. Maybe we don't push and do that thing, because I will just burn myself out if I have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. It's so true. And usually this time of year, I've already done a course launch and I haven't this year because I'm like, no, I just want to sit. I just want to sit until the sort of, the energy and motivation.
Well, we did the same thing actually. So the last 2 Januaries, we have not done a launch, and we used to always do a big one. And we would start pre-launch usually about the 5th of January. It wrecked our summer holiday every year. We didn't realize it did, because we tried to do as much work, up in November and stuff, but things would always push in. And I didn't realize how much bandwidth it took up, where we'd be sitting on the beach and we'd be thinking, oh, I've got to do that thing, I've got to write that email. And so we didn't do it the last 2 years. And even this year I said, let's wait until the kids go back to school to even plan out when we're going to do our launch.
Yeah.
And we decided, we're like, actually, let's still not, and focus on selling the Rose Farm, because that's a bigger rock than doing a launch. And we don't even know what our new launch cycle is going to be yet. And we will have to, start doing that again. But it has been really refreshing to go, actually, a January launch does not work for our family.
Yeah, and I love that. It's so important to be in tune with that, right? And know, and it's like
Yeah.
it's okay. Yes, we might be foregoing some income and revenue, but knowing we're making space for it later, and whatever we do next, the next launch that comes later, we'll probably turn up with more energy, and hopefully, make up for that gap where we haven't launched where we usually would.
Yes. And I would say to anybody who is either younger, I mean, it's so hard to know because you don't know. People could have told me this, I wouldn't have listened to them. But it's so important to save from your launches. If you're having those big launches, I know it's so tempting to spend it and upgrade your lifestyle. Taxes will get you, but also the reason why I'm very privileged to be able to say this now, the reason why I've been able to take so much time off and not doing launches is because I have assets to be able to sell if I want to. And so, yeah,
Yeah,
that's what you've got to do. Yeah, you've got to put some of it away. And I had someone at a conference come up and he's like, I just want to thank you. I'm making so much money. I was like, make sure you're saving it, put it away, because I think when you're in it, you feel like it's always going to be like this, but also I'm always going to be like this.
Yeah.
And not to be a Debbie Downer, but you never know when someone in your family is going to get sick, or you're going to get sick, or you don't feel like it anymore. And there's nothing worse than then feeling like, well, I have to, because I've created this big life, or I've created all these monthly expenses, and now I have to. Yeah. And I really saw that coming maybe 2 years ago, where I was investing in a lot of property, some boring ones that made money, but ones that were like money pits, really, that were just really exciting and fun. And so when all those interest rates went up, there was a point where my monthly mortgages were like 50 grand just for mortgages, and not even staff and, supporting my mom, supporting Mark's mom. And I got to a point where I was like, oh, this all rests on me. If I don't feel like it, tough luck.
Yeah.
Oh, and it was a real reckoning moment where I just went, I never want to feel like I have to, because I think the first part of my business was just pure enthusiasm and excitement and creativity. And when it tips over into, no, babe, now you have to do it. That is not fun. So even though some people hearing this, you still won't take the advice, and that's totally fine. Everyone has to go through it where you go, oh no, what have I done?
Yeah.
And I'm on the other side of that now. The Rose Farm is the final piece of that, but I've spent the last 2 years making sure this is sustainable success, and I'm not one of those rags to riches to rags again stories.
So wise. And my fashion business made all of those mistakes, was doing nearly 200K months and was like making decisions based on that particular awesome, successful month. And, or that year even, that then later really hurt me because, as we know, business ebbs and flows. And all of a sudden, my little fashion business had 6 full-time staff that I had to pay, every week, and I had a rent, and I actually had a Range Rover. I made all of these financial decisions based on the height of my success without the foresight of going, you know what, things can dip and things might die off, right? And during that time, it was like in the middle of COVID, in between lockdowns, I was like, oh no, it can't get worse. It'll, COVID's over, and then whoop, comes back again. And in the sort of era of like when the Facebook algorithm changed, and all of like the third party, the cookies weren't being tracked, and all of a sudden Facebook ads blew out and all this kind of thing. And then lo and behold, get a tax bill for 150 grand because I wasn't putting away the money and just going, what have I done? What have I done? It's just crazy, isn't it?
But I love that you're talking about it. I love that we're having this conversation, because I don't think it's hard, I think, too, when you have that success, to be vulnerable about those things, because people look up to you that, oh, well, you don't make any mistakes. And yeah, I remember the year that it switched. When you start making money, the tax office is like, oh, now you need to pay your taxes in advance. And so there was one year where I had to pay 850,000 from last year and prepay 850,000 for next year, because they assume you're making the same amount of money. And it was madness to try and do that, and also renovating 2 houses at the same time. And I was just like you, I was like, oh, well, that's fine. We're making 300,000 a month. Like, it's fine. And I remember even to the point where I was like, I didn't even look at prices. I was just like, solve a problem for me. Yep, no problem. And I think you do have to just go through that and to make those mistakes, because you realize that it is really human.
Yes, we get excited. We get excited, and we think,
so excited.
That's forever. And it is, and I know even for me, making those decisions like quite reactively then completely transformed my business model. It went from being a lean business to being quite a cumbersome business with all of these overheads. And my role in the business had changed dramatically from being, the creative and the digital marketer to the HR manager, having to do performance reviews and things like that. I was like, what have I done? So I
just wanted to do something creative and have some freedom.
Tinker with ads and pick out pretty fabrics, and now I'm breaking up fights in the office between staff and all kinds of crazy things. So it's definitely something that I encourage all of my clients, especially if as things take off and things get bigger. It's like, don't make any rash decisions, and make sure you're putting away your tax. And
you were probably told that. I was probably told that. We didn't listen. You have to go through it. But I think it is such a normalization thing, I think, to anyone who's in it and you think, oh no, I can't get out of it now. You absolutely can. You can. It's just then it's the same issues that we dealt with at the start of our business. Then it's like, well, now I have to let people go. And that feels really horrible. And I feel like a bitch.
Yeah. I lost sleep over that for months, thinking like, who am I going to let go? Because, the revenue then was no longer sustaining that level of expense. It's
I'm actually hearing this from so many people at the moment, that they go, I actually just want to go back to the early days where I had a lean business, maybe even fewer clients, less revenue maybe, but sometimes the same profit, but even sometimes less profit as a trade-off. But that's when you do have to be sensible and to go, okay, I want to manifest this beautiful life, but also maybe I don't need to have all the things at the moment. And that doesn't mean anything about myself. I actually downsized from living at the beach to it's actually a bigger house, but in a like a suburban neighborhood. And it felt like an ego death for Mark for sure, because he built that house and it was a really big manifestation for us. But also, so many other people were invested in that as a symbol of success. And then to go, but actually, it doesn't work for our family. It doesn't work financially. It doesn't work from a value point of view. And now, like, we're in a neighborhood that feels like 90s kind of community.
Nice.
Which is so feels more abundant to me, even though it doesn't look as abundant on the outside. And I feel so many people are going through that reckoning a little bit at the moment of going, hang on, maybe I don't need all of those things, and maybe I just want to go back to how it felt at the beginning, where it was less pressure, less stress. And as I said, this takes some unwinding, especially if you're as stupid as me and you retire your husband and now he works for you. But not only that, I retired my mother-in-law, I retired my own mother. Wow. And you've met my mom. She's currently in Bali. She just sent a picture of, she just got this massive tattoo on her arm, and I financially support my mom. And so it's those things too that it is hard to unwind some of those things and to right size. And for me, it always comes back to, people are not going to be happy. They're not going to like it. And that's always going to be the lesson. Always at the start in every phase of your business, it's always going to be, we want to be liked. We want people to think that we're generous and kind and all of those things. And we can be, and it's also okay to make those hard decisions sometimes. So I love what you've shared on this. And I think it's such an important conversation, and for people to hear that you're not alone. You're going to screw up. Doesn't matter how much money you make. You're going to make mistakes.
And don't let your ego get in the way, and those outside symbols of success. Like, people don't really care that much, like what car you drive. And, and then if you like downgrade your car or whatever, like, people don't really care that much. They're not that invested, where we think, oh God, they're going to think I'm failing or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, when we sold our beach house, and then when we were selling our farm, I did have people say that. They were saying, oh, there's these rumors that, you guys are going bankrupt. And I was like, no, not at all. But I actually don't want to I don't want to go from 5 million to 10 million, because why? I don't want to anymore. And there is an ego death for that, for sure. And also, I feel so much happier. And you know what? I won Ballerina of the Year at my studio last year because I have the bandwidth to go to ballet now.
And enjoy the other elements of life, like that makes up our whole existence.
And the last time I got Student of the Year at our studio in 1993. Still on Simone's wall, our dance teacher. And so that felt really good, and it felt like real life. I was like, oh, that's why I wanted to create the business, to have the freedom to do whatever I want. And along the way, I forgot that. And that's okay. And also, I think, to honoring those phases of life, there will be a point where we are empty nesters and we're not having to go to soccer and do all of those things. And I'm like, why do I think that my creativity will go away? I'm going to be creative in my 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. We've got time to try different businesses and to, try other things.
Yeah, absolutely. I know.
Yeah.
It's we're just only halfway through, right?
we really are. We really are. And there's so much to come, and you can honor the phase of life. And
and know, like, right, if I don't want to put my foot on the accelerator right now, that's okay. Like, I've got little kids, or whatever it might be, and later, if the inspiration and the chapter of life suits, then I'll do it then. Just know that it's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Absolutely. And you think of what we've been able to do online. That didn't exist. We didn't even have the glimmer and the idea of it. So we don't know what's coming.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know, we don't know when something will come, and we've got the energy to jump on that and go, yeah, it is the right time
Yeah.
to do that. So we have to be open to
Yeah.
that and compassionate to ourselves. Yeah.
It has been so beautiful chatting with you today. Thank you so, so much. For any of our listeners, tell us how can they follow you, dive into your work with you. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I'm really easy to find online. My social handles are Denise DT on most places. I love hanging out on Instagram in particular. And then I actually think a great place to start for people is to get one of my books. So Lucky Bitch is more written about manifesting and being in that real manifesty energy. Get Rich Lucky Bitch is about looking at some of your money blocks that could be holding you back. And then my most recent book, Chill and Prosper, is about creating a business that works for your personality and to try and find the ease and the chill in creating a business. And there are paperback, Audible. You
I'm
can
in,
find all the
and I'm
books.
in
Yeah.
Chill and Prosper in the third one. There's
Yes,
a case study of my different business models, which is so
that's
fun.
right. Exactly. Yeah, and then I've got my money boot camp for anyone who is craving that community. And all the information about those, my books and stuff, is at my website, denisedt.com. So you can jump on my newsletter list. And but yeah, I'm just here for people to explore and create safe places for us to explore these things, knowing that there's never a time. I used to always say, oh, I help you clear your money blocks. Now I know that's BS. Like, I can help you explore and understand your money blocks and help them not derail you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so great. I love it. And we will link all of your links in the show notes below as well. So it's super easy for people to find you. Thank you again, Denise. This has been so
Oh,
lovely to finally catch up. Thank you for
I
your
know,
time.
what an honor. And I wish we lived in the same city so we could go to dance class together,
I
because
know,
it's a
I
real
so want to do it.
joy.
Yeah.
And you'll laugh because my littlest one, who's 6, she started tap lessons, and we were allowed to go in and watch because it was like week 5 open week. And I was sitting there going, oh no, she's not picking it up. So then I've got a tap board at home, and I put out my tap shoes because I don't do a regular tap practice at the moment. I'd love to. I'm trying to convince my ballet studio to add it in. And so I've been teaching them tap at home. We call it tap homeschool. And all 3 of my kids now are tapping. And I'm like, that's all I want to do is just to go to dance class, just like we were growing up, where it was
Yeah.
just such a big part of our life. And I was just thinking, I wish there's video of this. Do you remember when we used to do the fashion shows at like David Jones and stuff? And it was like the 90s, so we were like like the awkward poses. I'm like, where is the video of that?
There's a wedding photo. It actually came up in my Facebook memories. And I don't know if you were there at Kantara House and we all had to dress up as bridesmaids and stuff, looking quite frightening. These 14, 15-year-old brides.
Very 90s,
I
yeah.
know, it's so
I
crazy.
wasn't there. I don't know why, but I know you and Christy
Mm.
got to dress up as brides, and I was very jealous. So I don't know where I was, but I was not involved in that one.
Oh, you missed
Um, but we have some amazing photos and
yeah,
experiences from those days. And honestly, I feel like my life has come full circle now, because I'm like, I just want to dance
back to
and
dancing. Oh, I need
do
to
some
find
creative
it.
stuff and a bit of business. Yeah, Simone does adults classes.
Does she? Okay, look into
Yeah,
it. I
yeah,
broke my
nice.
leg a year ago, so I'm still kind of recovering from that. Don't recommend
That's fair.
breaking your leg.
No.
But it's definitely something I want to get into for sure. And you watching you on your socials, dancing, that's just inspiring me. So yeah, I've got to do. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's been amazing to have you.